In Wisconsin today, Jeffrey Dahmer died. He was murdered in the prison where he was sent in 1991 for murdering 17 men and boys. In 1991, the revelation that he had eaten or otherwise defiled some of his victims revolted the nation. His death may not be as shocking.
Hey guys, and welcome to episode 4.5 of the Serial Chillers podcast. This is your host, Jesse, and we're going to pick up right where we left off with Jeffrey Dahmer. So, when we left off, Jeff had just been sentenced to 15 life sentences with no possibility of parole. He would then be sentenced to a 16th life sentence for that initial killing he did in 1978. He would be transferred to the Columbia Correctional Facility in Portage, Washington. So he's sentenced February 15th, 92, and on May 1st, 1992, he arrives at the Portage facility. He spends over 2 years in prison, and by all standards, he is a well-behaved prisoner. His sick sense of humor is not appreciated by anyone. He would sneak up on people. He would poke you in the back and get behind your ear and say, "Careful, I bite." And as we all know, Jeffrey Dahmer had a reputation that preceded him. So people knew who he was and what he did. So they were aware of his crimes. They were aware of the nature of the things that he did. And it didn't bode well for him because he went in with a notion about him. And when he got there, he didn't do any favors for himself. He initially started alienating guards and then would also alienate prisoners. So at one point it got to where he would have to be escorted anywhere he went in the prison that was outside of his cell because the prison was afraid that any guard or any prisoner that got him alone would definitely cause harm to him. So Jeff did a lot of things that were a little over the line, poking people and, sick jokes and just kind of rubbing his crimes in people's faces to kind of make them more afraid of him. He would also take food from the cafeteria that was left over, chicken bones, breadcrumbs, any meat that was left over, mashed potatoes, and he would fashion them into apparently very convincing severed limbs. So he would leave these really artfully crafted out of old food severed limbs in places he knew that they would be discovered, and he would splatter the area with ketchup. This has apparently been corroborated. He was doing this at a time where he was in prison and people sort of already feared what he was and who he was because of the sick things that he did. And he's building limbs from old food to look like, maybe something he had laying around in his apartment beforehand. So definitely not walking a good path with the guards or the prisoners he is around. So on the morning of November 28th, 94, he and two inmates, for whatever reason, are left alone for janitorial duties. Even though the window is only 20 minutes that the prisoners are left alone, inmate Michael Scarver was able to beat both Jeffrey Dahmer and Jesse Anderson with a 5-pound, 20-inch piece of metal over their heads. So they're in separate rooms, and he is able to do this. Neither of them die on the scene, but both would die as a result of their injuries. After the act, Scarver leaves behind the pipe, walks back to his cell, where he calmly tells a guard, quote, "God told me to do it. Jesse Anderson and Jeffrey Dahmer are dead," end quote. So upon learning the news of her son's death, his mother spoke out angrily to the media saying, "Now is everybody happy? Now that he is bludgeoned to death, is that good enough for everyone?" End quote. So Scarver explains himself and the day a little more by saying that Dahmer and Anderson were teasing him and, poking him as they walked in line and trying to, do the opposite shoulder tap, and they were standing on the other side. And it sounds honestly like an elementary school quarrel. These guys are poking each other and giggling and laughing. And because Scarver didn't like this so much, plus what he already knew of Jeffrey Dahmer and his crimes. Also, Michael Scarver's an African-American man. Jeffrey Dahmer's victims were primarily African American men. There's a lot of things and reasons that you can give to Michael Scarver doing this. Not to say that he's any type of hero for murdering somebody else. Jeffrey Dahmer clearly didn't need to be on this planet, but we're not trying to make him any type of folk hero here. Essentially, he says that after extended periods of them teasing him all morning, they split up to do different duties, sending Dahmer into an inmate locker room to clean and Anderson into a guard locker room to clean. Scarver follows Dahmer up into the room, asks if his crimes are true. He's sickened by it, and Dahmer starts to go into details about his crimes, according to Scarver, so that's when Scarver attacks. And it almost seems as if, from the story Scarver tells, that Jeff Dahmer was looking for a way out. Scarver claims that Jeff Dahmer just sort of took the beating. He fell to his knees. He never made a noise. He never tried to defend himself. He never tried to fight back. So it seems like there may have been something there where Jeff really wanted to get out of that life, and he did just that. So upon his death, they auctioned off all of his things. They were able to raise some $400,000 for his things. This money was given to the victims' families. And I mean, that's as close to closure as really anybody gets on this case. And that's sort of the long and short of it for Jeffrey Dahmer's death. He goes into prison on May 1st, 1992. He's killed November 28th, 1994. He's bludgeoned over the head with a 5-pound, 20-inch piece of metal and dies an hour later as the result of his injuries. So there is an end to Jeffrey Dahmer, and it was fitting, let's say. So if you guys want to talk more about Jeffrey Dahmer, if you want to reach out and tell me some facts that I got incorrect, because I'd love to hear the corrections, please do. You can reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, and through email. All of those are Serial Chillers Podcast. The email is serialchillerspodcast@gmail.com. If you like the show and feel like you would want to give anything to help out and just keep things like this going, maybe I could do more bonus episodes like this, put things together for you guys, please check out patreon.com/serialchillerspodcast. You can give as little as $1 a month there, and there's going to be some cool things coming up, you guys. I'm really excited about what's coming there. The show's growing a little more than I initially thought it would, and it's really cool to see how many listeners are really enjoying the content. So thanks everybody who's new and listening, and make sure you tell your friends. Also listen to the other show I'm a part of, the Anxious Extroverts podcast. I do it with Greg, who you've heard on this show. We have a lot of fun. We talk a wide array of things, and really just things that pique our interest, and we try to learn something about it and teach you something while we're doing it. And both this show and that show fall under the Sight Unseen Radio Network, so thank you guys so much for checking this out. I'm planning on doing a lot of 0.5 episodes like this for any information that I may have initially missed in the show. I'm going to try to do a backup one, just maybe even only a few days later, and get that information that I missed to you guys. Or maybe we'll just call them wrap-ups and have some fun. So the more support I can get going here, the more I can be able to do this, and the more content and better content that I can bring you. So I'm really excited about the future. Thank you guys so much for stopping by for episode 4.5 of the Serial Chillers podcast. Have fun. Remember, don't talk to strangers.